Welcome to the Tao of Our Understanding Recovery Podcast. In this podcast, we discuss mystical works of literature and how they relate to recovery. We hope you enjoy today's podcast episode.
Hello, this is Buddy C. Welcome to the Tao of Our Understanding Recovery Podcast. Today I have Izzy with me. Izzy's going to tell his story. If you haven't been listening lately, the last few weeks we've taken a break from meetings, and I'm interviewing different people who've been involved in the podcast and people who the Tao really speaks to give you some real life experience of how these principles are applied to our daily life, which is the goal for me. Any announcements like meetings and resources, go to buddyc.org. And you've got a lot of things there, including a daily Tao devotion that I'm in the middle of writing. And I'm using that to keep me accountable. And you're welcome to sign up for that. That link's there as well. So lots of good stuff at buddyc.org. That's all I'm going to do with announcements. Izzy, I'm going to turn it over to you, sir. We'd like to hear what it was like and what happened and what it's like now. And then we'll get into a little bit of Tao conversations. Izzy, you have the floor, sir.
All right. Thanks, buddy. I appreciate it. My name is Izzy, and I'm a grateful recovering member of SA, Sexaholics Anonymous. And let me tell you a little bit about what it was like, what happened, and what it's like today for me. So my sobriety date, just for point of reference, is December 25 of 2015. And I had, ever since I can remember, about the age of 3 years old, I remember I had a definite predisposition to hypersexuality. So I can't say that I was an addict at 3 years old, but I definitely had a predisposition for my drug of choice. And it followed me. I can point out specific references to throughout my childhood, in which at 8 years old, I remember being in a hotel with my family, and my two brothers then were in high school at that point. And I remember them, they turned on the television, they were watching, some R-rated late night movie. And, basically I saw a sex scene over there that was just, for me, like, it just took my world over. I still remember that, like, out of the things in childhood that I remember, like, that's one of the things that just stick out to me that was just so infatuating that, like, years later when I was full on into my addiction, it would I remember searching for that, I Googled, which movie was that from, and I finally found it, and I was like, wow, but like I couldn't find that exact scene. Maybe it was just in the TV movie. And that was part of the insanity. And I always felt like when I was seeing a couple make out in the street or by a beach or in a movie in front of my family, I always felt like I was the one in the room that was the most turned on, but at the same time the most embarrassed. So I guess that's where my predisposition came in for it, just to talk about that a little bit, I guess. Then when things started getting really out of hand, I was about 12 years old. I started with fantasy. I just, puberty, this puberty speech. I came from a ultra religious home, and the whole puberty speech doesn't really thing with my family, my community. So yeah, I didn't get that, and no sex ed in my school, wasn't that kind of thing, and I just realize that there was this amazing thing where I can just, think about women, females, because that was, for me, that was my turn on up, and I would just be able to enjoy myself like that, and I wasn't even sure what I was doing then, so it wasn't like too intense or too much, but so I started doing it then, and for me, the consequences started pretty much right away, and I didn't realize it right away, but it was I always had a lag effect. Like, it usually took a certain amount of time, maybe a few weeks, few months, whatever it was. But, after I would let's say, lusting, as the drug in essay we call lust. So, after I'd be lusting for a while in any shape or form, whether it was, just fantasy or, watching porn later on, just doing crazy stuff. So I would get immediately, or not immediately, as I'm saying, but eventually I would get incredible anxiety, incredible depression, or usually it was a combination of both. And at this point, it was like, kind of like a low baseline of anxiety where I just had to catch my breath. And the reason why I'm talking about these emotions specifically is that I'm sure there are people out there that can identify. And for those that can, I think this could be helpful, because I remember I couldn't identify with a lot of the speeches in AA, SA, and I don't know, for me, the feelings are very, very crucial and very a part of my story. And it was the thing that led me to wanting to get sober and to helping me with, and that's my main first step. It's not how far down the ladder I've got, but that was my bottom. I bottom back emotionally. Anyway, so just to fast forward and try to get to the solution quicker. When I was in high school, I got to high school, and in high school, religious high school, I went out of town, to a dormitory and, these kind of places. It's ultra Orthodox place where all they do pretty much all day is, study the Bible study and then the Talmud. And, my whole childhood life was all about just quick fixes. When as a kid, it's, mostly playing with my friends, eating, good food, whatever, candy, whatnot. Just doing things that a kid wants to do. In school, I would space out and just try to get to recess. That was the goal. Goal is to get to recess. So when I went to this intense school over there, which I didn't really have enough wherewithal to tell my parents that, like, I really didn't want this, and like extracurricular activities like art and music and things that I'm really involved with now, weren't really an option, in my community. So it wasn't like I was able to tell them, or I didn't even know myself that's really what I wanted. Cause that was like just taboo. It's like, you have to become a rabbi or nothing, So yeah, so when I was there, I was really unhappy and really unproductive. And so, sitting in a classroom for 2-3 hours at a time, sitting and trying to study Talmud for 4 or 5 hours at a time. And recently I've just realized that I have undiagnosed ADHD. So that was definitely a big part of it. But I mean, I turned to one thing, and that was fantasy. That was when fantasy started becoming rampant in my life. It was was strong. It was intense. And I would just fantasize for hours upon end. I'd create my own pornos for 4 hours straight. Um, and yeah, that's just what I did. And I did that for better part of a year. And that was 10th grade, 11th, end of 10th grade. I just had this insane depression that kicked in. Where every single fear, irrational fear, it was like Dante's Inferno inside my psyche, really what it was. It was hell, it was fear, it was petrifying, it was dark. My mind played all kinds of tricks on me. At one point, I forgot. My mind told me that like I was if I swallow, I would choke, so I couldn't really swallow for 2 weeks. I would have to try to eat like soup and stuff like that, and like it was just a mind thing. Um, and I was afraid to go on medication because that was also kind of taboo in my community that back then. And and my parents didn't really, like it so much, but even they took me to a psychiatrist because I was so messed up. But I decided I didn't want to take them. My parents did all they could. They were good parents. Nothing to blame on them, but yeah, it was the way it was. What God wanted, I believe now. Um, but it was just terrifying. And, certain times I was being school over there and I would just think like maybe my family's actually not my family. And, it was kind of like a Goosebumps kind of book, and that went on for the better part of a year, 11th grade. And when I suffered crazy through that, I would think I have cancer every other day for kind. And just petrified. I would just wake up shaking just to be afraid of facing the day. I would literally wake up petrified, like just really, really afraid. And I would just have to call a different member of my family because I knew friends at that point wouldn't understand me. And I would call up a different member of my family for 45 minutes to an hour. And however long they could stand me until I could call the next one and just tell them what's going on. No one really knew what to do with me. They talked to me well and they helped me out, which I'm very grateful for. God provided me with them to this day. I would not have been able to get through it without them. I'm very grateful for that. And I'm very grateful also that during these times, I usually got like a week or so, or a week and a half of reprieve where God kind of just shut off my brain. I was able to my brain just got shut off and I got kind of like comfortably numb. Shout out to Pink Floyd there. But yeah. And then, I got a little bit of reprieve just to quicken this up. For a couple of years, it kind of just, things kind of just went away. I kind of just forced myself into full study mode in 12th grade and went on to have a few years of reprieve. And then I had another bout of where pornography started just taking over my life, Started with the laptop and that's it, pornography opened a new world for me where there's tons of pornography. And just looking out at the street and woman, just a whole load of all of that stuff. And it would just be, pornography all the time. Masturbating 3 times a day, sometimes more, sometimes less, sometimes, and then trying to stop and then not being able to. I mean, I wouldn't try to stop really until a few months later. I started having the consequences, and this time it came in a full-on panic attacks mode, where I would just have kind of panic attacks for days. It wouldn't last like the 15 minutes or the hour. It would be like days or weeks where I wouldn't stop. Like my heart rate and my breathing, it would just be so elevated and so shallow. I just felt like I would just wanted to die. And at one point, the scariest thing happened, which was like I felt like I had to control my breathing, and if I wouldn't, then I would stop. It would just die. That's it. And the feeling was so real, and it was so like true in my head. And only thing I could think of, like, why that, like, I mean, I don't know why, but I could only contribute the feeling to the fact that, I don't know, I guess I was so spiritually bankrupt, so empty, everything like that, that like, and the breath, I believe comes from like the universe, comes from God, comes from spirituality. Like every breath is life, and that, like that, whatever kind of life that I was hanging on to from the universe, from the spirit, from the Tao, whatever you want to call it, was so bankrupt that I felt like physically, if I wasn't controlling it, it would stop. And I was so disconnected, and it freaked me out so hard. Yes, I just went through. That was just another hellish period of my life until finally, and that was just horrible. I can go on for that for a while, but that was the basic, hell of that just went on for a bunch of years. Started smoking a lot of weed then, and like a few years after that. Anyways, finally I got into the essay program. I had a friend of mine disclosed to me, and then I had a family member who just pushed me and told me to just get the help I need. Which I'm grateful for, and I came in and I was just basically a stoner who just couldn't get my shit together, anything like that. And I hear a lot of speakers talk about not cursing in the rooms, not that's all that stuff, and being respecting the program or not. I don't know. If they wouldn't have let me use my 4-letter vocabulary, I would have made it. I don't know. For me, everything was 4 letters in the beginning. It was just a string of those, and like I had nothing. I had nothing to lose at that point. Nothing to, and my shares were just all pretty much just hopeless jabber. It just like it was just basically a cry for help, pain, and but slowly, like after 7 months of struggling in the program, not really getting what surrender was. And really, surrender is now what my program relies on. I actually, like surrender really is my fallback. It's my whole program. It's what gives me so much identification with Buddy C and Buddy's book, Powerless but Not Helpless, and the Tao. And I'm going to get to that real soon. That's why I'm very grateful that I made acquaintance with Buddy and with the book. So I had a few sponsors, but they weren't helping me until I got and so I just kept dropping them until I got my fourth one. It just gave me the message that I needed to understand what surrender was, which he just basically tells, because my head was my brain, like so many of ours, was just on an endless loop of like beating the crap out of myself all the time, just beating myself up. Like, I should be doing this. I should be doing that. I should be going to morning prayers. I should be working. I should be making money. I shouldn't be smoking weed. I shouldn't. And he would just tell me, don't worry about the smoking. Don't worry about this. Don't worry about sleeping on time. My schedule then was like just, staying up till 6 a.m., making the morning meeting, and then like sleeping throughout the day, waking up at 4 or 5 p.m. and I don't know, whatever. Crazy. But he's like, don't worry about that. He's like, just come to meetings, work the program, make your phone calls, and you'll stay sober. And my biggest fear was also staying sober. I'm like, it's the hardest thing on earth. I always feared that I'm going to be an addict and I'm going to have to stay sober, And he's like, just work the program, just make phone calls, and you'll stay sober. It was like, for me, that was a great indication. Like, I don't have to worry about anything. I don't have to worry about myself staying sober. It's not my job to stay sober. It's my job to just make some phone calls, and basically just to put my higher power, whatever it is that you want to call that thing that is going to do the work for me. That surrender, however that is, to put that power as my program. And even regarding the program, working the program, I always ask my higher power, which I call God. I always say, God, you need to help me work the program. I can't do it because when I say, okay, I got this and I could just work the program and it will work. It doesn't work for me because I all of a sudden I start working the program, but all of a sudden I find myself not meditating in the morning. I find myself, making, work finding work taking place in front of my program. I find a million things, and until I get back down to my knees, till God once again shoves me down, takes my ego, and says, you're not so hot after all. It reminds me of one specific incident where I really my surrender really went up like huge, like 50% of a level, I'd say. And it was during a time where I was having this crazy obsession in my mind of whether I was lusting or not lusting, like just in the street, like a lot of time, like what a lot of sexaholics go through is like in the street. Sometimes we just can't, like, I'm not sure if I'm looking at a woman lusting or not, and then that just sends my mind to a crazy obsession of swirlingness and whatnot. And I was having that. I wasn't stopping. It was just going on week after week until I was just really going insane. And I was doing all the actions. I was surrendering it. I was making phone calls, and usually that works. And then it just got to a point where I was just like, I either had to act out or something had to break, And I started crying and praying to God. And all of a sudden I came upon Bob Darrell and Bob D, his speech, and one of his speeches, and he said basically how he's talking about step 3, how we give our life and our will and our life over to the care of God, and we have nothing else but that. And it's like the step 3 prayer he went over, how God, I offer myself to thee. I'm giving myself to God to build me and do me the bond of self. And he was talking about the bonds in himself as just like, relieve me of the bondage of me. I'm just so full of me that, I can't see anything else. And so, so I could be of help to others anyway. And the point of that for me, what hit home so much was like, I realized that I was trying to surrender. I was trying to force the surrender. And that's basically like, if I'm getting attacked by a bunch of, soldiers and it's basically like, I'm just going to start taking my white flag and hitting them with it, like that's not going to work. That's just you know what I mean? That's just gonna antagonize them. Like, it's just really the opposite of what surrender is. Surrender is that I gotta step away from the fight, and I gotta just get down on my head. And as soon as I did that, and I realized, that I can't do it, and I asked God, help me surrender it. Like all of a sudden it fell away, and God brought me into the whole. And just looking at what really helps me with surrender, and how to understand it, and hi, bud.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, Izzy. Let's dig a little deeper in surrender. You were getting to the meat of it there. That was the hardest thing for me to learn in recovery was surrender. I did exactly what you're talking about. for 5 years. I did not know how to surrender. I thought God helped me with this stuff. He doesn't help. We have to step out of the way and just let him do the whole thing. That's what I finally concluded. And I like your scenario of hitting the soldiers that you surrendered to with a flag, with a white flag. But when you surrender, man, you lay down every weapon you lay down. And, and then your captors are responsible for your well-being too, on top of it. That concept, we're taught you don't surrender, you double down, you work harder and do better. And I had that same fight. What's all the tools you use for surrender? Izzy, do you'd said you reached out to other alcoholics, other folks in recovery. Before I forget, I love it that 12 steps works. I've seen people with any type of addiction and 12-step recovery work. It's just such a gift for all of us, surrender. The tools that you use, you said that there were some tools you used that eventually didn't work for you. You had to take it to another level, right?
Yeah. Surrender for me is it's kind of like an evolution. It keeps evolving.
Yes.
Like I said, surrender, started out just, the taking actions of the program and then realizing that worked, and then it worked until it didn't. And then I realized that I had to let go of some more ego because I had to learn that, just taking the actions of program and not really, and thinking that just works. That didn't work because I had to realize that, without some amount of humility, that wouldn't work.
Izzy, if you could explain, if we may have some newcomers listening to this podcast, what is the actions of the program? What do you mean when you say that? What the actions were? What is that for you?
Sure. For me, the main actions of the program are going to meetings, phone calls, connecting to other members in recovery. Very important. Always being honest of where I'm at. Always, telling people what's going on with me, at meetings and on phone calls. I can get more specific. I have more time. Then there's, very important is my connection with God. The big book says, conscious separation is my problem. Conscious contact's my solution. So, meditation, even if it's 5 minutes in the morning, even if it's 5 minutes and I pick up a little reading, pick up a lot of times, you're powerless but not helpless. And I'll pick up a little bit of reading, just think about it and ask God, what he wants for me for the day. And sometimes many times these days, like I won't go too deep into, be all philosophical, like what God wants me to do, but I'll just know intuitively, okay, like what am I lacking yesterday or today that I feel like I need to do to up my recovery a little bit to help. I feel like, today I probably need to reach out to more people for myself, or maybe today I need to help other people more, and helping other people is a huge tool in program. As we know the big book says, in helping others, the first paragraph right there, it says, when nothing else works, helping others is, I'm paraphrasing it as, when nothing else does, Yeah. So those things are key.
It's interesting how no matter what addiction brought us to recovery, we end up having to deal with emotional issues when we thought our addiction was the problem, right? when we find out our addiction was just masking the problem. It was a symptom.
Yeah, I didn't really believe that for a few years until, that it was just masking it until like I finally started seeing a pattern. Like, like why would I always, turn to my drug? It's always because I just felt, that I just felt shitty because I wasn't doing what I was supposed to be doing. I wasn't accomplishing. I wasn't, I felt less than. I felt afraid and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, just that stuff just led me to the worst parts of me. But yeah, it's all about my feelings and emotions.
So how do you handle that today? Let's say you have an emotion come up. Let's say you get angry. How do you handle that today versus, early in recovery or pre-recovery?
Okay, so first of all, just a disclaimer, like in SA, we it's more common, I believe. I'm not saying this as a fact. Don't take me to court on this, but it's more common, I believe, to take medication for our struggles and stuff because we're not really. It's not so much about substance abuse. Although, by the grace of God, I stopped smoking marijuana a few months after I got sober. So been clean now for 7 years of that. I'm grateful for. But I do take, anti-anxiety medication, antidepressant medication, and that helps. That definitely helps a lot. I wouldn't be able to work a program without that, but it definitely does not come close to what the program does for me. Because I was taking that before I came to program and I was still helpless and hopeless. So yeah, what really helped me is working the program. Now, when I'm angry, working a 4th step is amazing. I mean, what it does for me is great. And essentially, just quickly, the way I'll work the 4th step is, going through the basics of, what's my part in it and all that. But essentially just, seeing where I'm wrong and then really praying for the other person as for things that I would want myself. And that gives me a connection, to the other person. And then right after that, like, I feel lighter, but then after that, when I say God, I don't use the exact terminology in the big book where it pretty much says God take it, we now ask God to remove the obsession. There's the resentment, but I just say, God, I'm powerless over this resentment. I surrender it. Because those words are just golden for me. Surrender words. So for me, yeah. So for me, like that just relieves so much of that, and sometimes I have to do it over and over. But I mean, usually at one, if it's a small thing or whatever, that just takes it away like instantly.
It's a practice, It's a practice.
Oh yeah.
So we're not going to do. We're practicing. We're continually practicing. So, and we're not going to do it perfect. I don't know if we'll ever do it perfectly. I just hope that, with time, it takes shorter amounts of time for me to see the difference, for me to feel different, yeah, that's good stuff, Izzy. Thank you. So you sponsor guys too, right? You sponsor.
Yeah. Sponsorship, buddy. That's my drug right now. It's helping others.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, again, my favorite speaker in AA is Bob D. So, I mean, he says like, the real, like, he's like, newcomers think, guys like, guys that are sponsoring people, they just want the clout and whatnot. But he's like, no, it's the real dope. Like, that's the real drugs. You want to get a real high, take someone and show them the ropes and give them something what you have, and watch somebody go, take somebody through a surrender, and watch them get free from something, and literally there's no highs that can match that for me, which is amazing. And I don't know if I told you the surrender parable that I give to all my sponsees, but I'll go through it quick. Compare it, since we just recently, been through the war in Afghanistan. So I compare it to, an American soldier, who basically got separated from his platoon, and he lost his gun, and he just has a K-bar knife, and he's the calm guy, but he's looking over the hill trying to find his guy, and right over the hill these 15, 20 Taliban armed to the teeth with AK-47s. Just gonna wait till that siren passes by, and and he knows that, hey, right away, the training that kicks in for him, like telling him fight. That's what we do. We fight. Because right, my whole life, like you mentioned before, like everyone told me, you're just not doing enough. You're not doing enough. If you would be doing a little better, that would be great. Uh, everything would be great. And no matter how much I tried, it just things never added up. So, instead of, but then, thought comes to him that, because he knows that if he starts fighting with his knife, the death is just going to come quicker. They're just going to shoot him right where he stands. So what he does is he gets on his knees, takes his knife in his hand, puts his weapon down, and when the Taliban, sees that he's doing that, they can relax a little bit. They can let their guard down. So when I'm encountering my drug, for example, as the same thing, instead of going crazy and starting to say, no, I'm not doing it, I'm not going, I say, 1 second, I can't fight this. This is a power greater than myself, just like the, step 1 says, right? I'm powerless over my drug, and I can't fight it. So what's the point trying to fight it? So surrender. The first step, surrender is 2 steps for me. The first step is to go get down on my knees, lay down my weapons, whatever my weapons are that I used to fight it with. And the second step is that once they're all calmed down, the Taliban are chilling around, they take out their cigarettes, start smoking and talking to each other. What are we going to do with this American dude? He's the comms guy, so he presses his earpiece and he calls in for air support, his grid, and he calls in the A-10, the Warthogs, and he calls in the Apaches and Blackhawks, whatnot, and in English, and they don't understand what he's saying. And all of a sudden they come in and with their howitzers and their whatnot, and they just sit there snipers, and he knows just to lay down and boom, they take down all the enemy, and he just gets up, dusts himself off, and he's free. And I equate that to an action program where I make a phone call. I call a couple of my friends. I just tell them what's going on. And by a power greater than myself, but it was an action that was not done at all directly. The fight had nothing to do with me, myself, but it was an action that I took indirectly by calling some friends of mine, power greater than myself, a higher power, because the choppers come in elevated. That takes away the issue, the problem. And that's the best way that I can really describe surrender.
That's fantastic, Izzy. That is fantastic. I have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
You're Jewish Orthodox, correct? In your religion?
That is correct.
Okay. How has your thoughts of a higher power changed from what you were raised and taught and what you came into the program with to what it is now? I'm just curious because I haven't had this opportunity.
Buddy, yeah, that's a great question. That is an amazing question. I'm so glad you asked that question. Loaded question, but a great question. So for me, a lot of people, the Jewish faith, they grow up in different homes, different schools. It's so a lot of them perceive God as loving, as fear, meaning FAIR, the fear God. For me and a lot of others, unfortunately, though, we're taught that, from school, from our parents, I'm very ultra Orthodox, schools and home, that, God is kind of like a fair God, but he rewards you when you do good, punishes you when you do bad. I don't like, the Irish Catholic thing, where we have like that, we grow up with that crazy guilty conscience, and where it's like, I grew up just thinking, like, if I'm doing more good deeds than bad deeds, okay, I'll probably go to heaven. But like, how am I supposed to know? Like, it's always, and it kind of creates this OCD thing where it's like, I need to do some more, some more good deeds, whatever that is. Like, read a little more scripture, or do some extra thing, give extra charity, like if I have 4 cents on me, I'll give 3 to charity and 1. But like stuff like that, which should make me crazy. And when bad things happen to me, like, I could pray to God, but like, what's that prayer going to do to me? And obviously, before then, I didn't really, before program, it was always praying for myself and, the selfish prayers and all that. But yeah, but the way God is for me now, it's totally different. Like, I don't even call him the same name. In the Jewish God, we call Shem, which means the name. It's just because we don't use God's name and all that. But now, I call him God and God only because, God is different than Hashem for me. God is loving. God is caring. God understands. And God, it's not that God will never do anything that's challenging for me, but he's only calling me to the mat sometimes just because he wants me to come back to him, to get to know him a little bit better. And he's not out there to judge. He's not out there to judge me. He's out there to know me, to get to know me. And the best thing about it is, the best thing about this whole, the thing that, like, I'm an addict, I'm addiction and all that is just basically what the Tao teaches, that the greatest knowledge is to know that I don't know. And that I don't have, and for me, like, being inherently like kind of lazy, procrastinating and all that, like, it's such a relief that, like, the whole surrender thing, the whole thing, and the whole, knowing that I don't have to know, I don't have to, I just, like, my original sponsor, just always told me, just work a program and just let everything else work out and work it, just work itself out. Like, when I do that, everything seems to just fall into place. Like, I don't have to overwork in my business and my company or whatever. Like, things work out much better than when I'm working 12-hour days. I could work a 2-hour day and things work much better. I can, I can, whatever it is, money, relationships, stress, anxiety, family stuff, everything just works out so much better when I'm just mainly focusing on my program, and then just, everything it's the best. It's the best. And
Hey,
one more thing, buddy, quickly. Uh, what your book gave me in recovery, you're powerless but not helpless. And I'm going to plug your book whether you like it or not, because what it gave me is a little bit of a challenge, a mental challenge. Because one thing I find in recovery that's a little bit tough is that a lot of the stuff is very simple, which it obviously needs to be, and it's very helpful because I can't do it if it's not simple. But I sometimes I look for that challenge. I look for that mind puzzle a little bit, and something deep, something to get a little deep into, which I could get lost. My mind can kind of just start thinking about and get lost in. And with your book, on the Tao, directly related to alcoholism, and that really, when at a time where I was so just like dead in my recovery, it gave me a spark, and it gave me such a newfound interest and a new rejuvenation in my program. So I'm really, really grateful for Powerless But Not Helpless recovery book by Buddy C that you can get on Amazon.com. BuddyC.org.
Thank you, Izzy. I appreciate that. I'll let other people plug me. I don't do it myself. So thank you. This, what you were describing, I was thinking about riding a wave, and that's what you're talking about, is we just continually ride this wave of the moment. And the way we do that is by working the program, by practicing, by being of help. And if we just stay in the moment, the rest of it takes care of itself. Doesn't mean we don't plan and all those things, but we just stay where we're at, where our feet are, as much as possible. And it just evolves and keeps going on and on and on. I want to ask you too, if somebody were to ask you what the Tao is, what would be your response?
The Tao would tell me, I don't know. The Tao, I'd say, the Tao, officially means, right? It means the way.
Yes.
It's, I just say, I guess I would use some more words to explain it. I'd say it's allegedly Lao Tzu's way of his philosophy on life, but it's I think it's I would describe it as a way of living in surrender.
Yes.
A way of living free of the burden of having to know the answers.
Yeah.
And if I really
living a path of compassion, right? Of virtue.
Living in the path of compassion, virtue, and also just living a path where, just like, when we tasted the vinegar in the parable, and it's perfect, exactly how it should be. It's pretty much, living in the now and knowing that the now is good. Whatever the now is, it's good.
Yeah.
The Tao is the now.
It's another 3-letter word for now, right?
Exactly.
Hey, before we go, do you have a couple of verses that you would like to share with everyone?
So I have. I honestly, I read the Tao through your book. I don't really have. But I love. I read today. Today, my verse was verse 53. My one fear, which and it just reminded me because we had I had somebody in my fellowship recently that had a slip, so it was had a lot of time, so that was definitely it was God just brought me to this reading. I feel and what it says over here is, if I had a fear, it would be straying from this way. And this way I'm interpreting as the program at this point, just for now.
Right?
Yeah. The path, and in this case is the program, but this way is broad and easy but I prefer to take side roads and shortcuts. I prefer to talk about spiritual axioms while I conceal anger or resentment. I like to sound spiritual in meetings and pretend I do not feel I am better than others. This behavior is far from the way and always leads me toward a drink. And yeah, if I'm not going to be consistent in going to my meetings or going to what I know and calling people, going to what I know helps me now. And the fact that I know that I have a Tao now, I have a path. That's honestly the best thing for me right now is the fact that I know that I have a path towards serenity, peace, and happiness in program, in the Tao, in this kind of philosophy, in this kind of, and I just have to take these actions and the feelings will follow. Even if I'm not happy right now or okay, all I need to do is, reach inside, share it with somebody, get in the now, get in the present, and just stick with the Tao, stick with the philosophy, and everything will be fine.
If a newcomer was listening to this podcast, never been to meetings, just dipping their toe into recovery, what would you suggest for them?
I'd say at the beginning, I was afraid of coming into recovery because, oh my God, now I'm an addict and I can never, and it's fear because I can never do drug again. In reality, I realized that all it was is I'm getting help right now to a problem that I always had before. And recover, being an addict has perks, just like if I was a normal person, because if I was a normal person, I would have to fight everything, and I have to do everything kind of on my own. The work would have to be on my own merit, more or less. Yeah, you can bring God into it and everything, but over here, our reliance is 100% on God. Everything is God, Step 3 is I give my life to God, and my will and my life, which is everything. There's nothing else. Step 6 and 7, my character defects, it's just like, try to bring some willingness, but then 7 is ultimately just asking God to remove it. So if everything is God's problem and I just have to, work a little bit of a program, it makes life so much easier. So yeah, so to a newcomer, come in and enjoy the ease and comfort. Instead of the first drink, enjoy the ease and comfort of being in a fellowship where you're loved, you're accepted.
Thank you, Izzy. That's a great way to close. So
thank you so much, buddy. I appreciate you.
I'm so happy that you reached out. We connected. Thank you for sharing your story, Izzy, and we will talk soon.
Hello, this is Buddy C. I wanted to make you aware of several recovery-related resources that I've posted in the episode description. These resources include a list of recovery podcasts, a free sober meditation app, daily recovery email, shared Google recovery calendars. Hope you put some of these resources to use and have a great week.
Thank you for listening to the Tao of Our Understanding Recovery Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends in recovery.